With Adobe Aero, it's never been easier to take your Cinema 4D animated objects and characters and transform them into immersive and interactive AR experiences. You won't want to miss this. One of the biggest barriers to entry for motion designers to get into the world of AR was the sheer amount of complexity, coding, and scripting that needed to be involved to get an animated object or character from Cinema 4D or any 3D app and into AR with all that animation and information and tack. With Adobe Aero, it completely removes those barriers and allows you to program your own interactions and bring in animation from Cinema 4D with no coding experience required. It's so easy that anyone, even my mom, could create their own AR experience. So it's crazy. I think Adobe Aero is going to be a game changer, and I can't wait to see where Adobe Aero takes us as far as getting average motion designers into this new medium and new platform. So let's go ahead and jump in and discover how easy it is to get Cinema 4D animations or just regular 3D objects into AR with Adobe Aero. Now, before I jump into Cinema 4D, there is a slight update to Mixamo. And if you don't know about Mixamo, comes with your Creative Cloud subscription, but it automagically can rig and animate your character using mocap data. It is fantastic. If you haven't played around with it yet, I highly encourage you to try it. But if you want to do character stuff, there is this button that has been added to Mixamo's website that you can directly send a character with animation applied to it, like any character from this characters menu here. You can upload your own character, but then you can go to the animations and you can actually apply your own animations to your character and click this send to Aero button, and it'll actually save it to your Creative Cloud file library, where you can then just directly bring that into Adobe Aero and place it anywhere in reality using AR. So this is a really cool update to easily just get an asset, create a character, create an animation, and send it to Aero just to play around with it. So I wanted to mention this right off the top, that there is this new send to Aero button that you can use characters or upload your own and just send it directly to Aero through Mixamo's website. But let's go ahead and talk about if you wanted to create your own character or your own object with animation in Cinema 4D and how you can get that into Aero. All right, so here is my little animated Sumo character slamming his leg down. Now what we're gonna do, our aim is to get this guy from slamming his leg in Cinema 4D and having him do that projected on my computer desk that I'm sitting at right now in AR using Adobe Aero. So to make that transition, there are a few things you need to keep in mind when building assets for AR, because what you're doing is you're going from a fully loaded computer with a lot of computing power, and what you're going to be doing is trying to view that same thing in AR space using a mobile device that has way less power. So we need to be mindful of how we're building things, animated objects or just regular objects or characters in Cinema 4D, to have it actually play back on a mobile device. So one of the few things that you need to keep in mind, and this first thing that I'm going to talk about is something you should keep in mind even when you're just not even working for AR, but actually just working in normal workflow, and that one thing is polygon count. So if I go to display, garage shading lines, you can see all my polygons here. One thing to note about Aero is that there is a limit of 130,000 polygons. Now, if you want to get a sense of how many polygons your scene is made up of, just go to your mode, go to project info, and what I'm going to do is just select a single object in my object manager, go Command or Control key A to select all, and let's just go back into our project info panel here. If we go to the object selection, you can see we have a whole bunch of polygons here. It's 2,000, almost 3,000. And one thing you're going to notice is that we are not even calculating things like primitives here. So primitives, very important to also kind of dumb down the rotation segments or any kind of segments to not have something that's super, super dense like that. When you start seeing a polygon density that is almost black here, that is way too much. So let's bring this down to like 65. So you just need enough detail to make this look nice and smooth, okay? So let's just say, let's go and make all of these primitives editable. Same thing with our subdivision surface. Subdivision surface and any generator object are also things that need to be taken into account. So if you have a very high subdivision renderer, bring that down to just have this look smooth enough. So something like 2 is pretty good for here. And let's just make that subdivision surface editable. And now we have all editable objects here. Now we can go ahead and hit Command or Control A to select all, and then let's see what our project info says as far as our polygon count goes. So in this simple scene, we have over 7,000 polygons. So polygons can add up. So if you have a even bigger, more detailed character or detailed object, always keep track of how many polygons you have, because again, something as simple like this is over 7,000 polygons. So that is a biggie. Keep your primitives in your subdivision surface and all your generator objects. Have those subdivisions just high enough so you get the form of your object and it looks smooth, okay? With a single character like this, I probably could have made more subdivisions, but you know what? Even if you have more subdivisions, it could slow down in Aero. So let's go out of Display Garage shading and just get back to our normal shading. And let's actually talk about shading. Let's talk about materials. So what Aero supports is your basic run-of-the-mill kind of standard material, okay? So I have some just standard materials here. If I double click here, you can see that I only have color and reflectance going on here with a Beckman type of reflection. So your standard default reflection type, and that is what Aero supports. So it supports specular, it supports reflection, and it supports the blurriness of that reflection, okay? So one thing to keep in mind with that is that in Aero, it's not actually going to reflect objects in your real world scene. So if you have a computer monitor, it's not actually gonna like sense that there's a computer monitor, read that and reflect that computer monitor onto your object. It's kind of gonna have like a kind of fake HDRI reflection that makes it kind of look like it's fitting in the scene there. So don't really worry about like accuracy. It's not going to reflect things in your actual room or my table, but it does a pretty good job, okay? So one thing to keep in mind with materials, again, it supports the basic color channel that you can choose a color. It can support textures as well. One thing to note about textures though is that you need to have the base textures scaled down to about 2K. And Adobe recommends that materials are on a 1:1. So, 128 by 128, kind of like a square. But for my little character here, I'm not using a texture or anything like that. I'm just using color. Another thing to keep in mind as far as textures go is that if you're using, say, a noise shader or like a tile shader or anything like that, you need to bake that out into a texture, an actual image file like a PNG or JPEG for it to work, okay? This also accepts alpha as well if you do have some kind of alpha. So those are the things to keep in mind. But if you're just doing plain old color and reflectance, you are good to go. You just really need to set that up the typical way you would. One thing to keep in mind is that when you bring the reflection into Aero, the reflection strength is really not going to do anything. So say you want a very subtle amount of reflection, you're going to really want to blur and create more roughness to blur out that reflection so it's a lot more subtle. So I'll give this a value of like 80 roughness for this little band here. And then maybe for the skin, I have a little bit of roughness, maybe 50%, so you can have like somewhat shiny skin, okay? And same thing with the hair, maybe we crank up a little bit of roughness there so it's even more slight. And you can also use specular and up that strength, or just add a whole nother layer of specular here if you wanted to, so we can get our specular here and crank that up if you wanted to, but I'm actually not going to use any specular at all. I'm just going to go straight reflection here, okay? So that's all you really need to know about materials and textures. Let's move on to animation. So Aero supports all position or translation, scale, and rotation. Those are all fully supported. So if I go into my timeline here, you can see I have all these position keyframes on, say, the torso and the head, all that good stuff. And the other thing that it supports is joint animation with skin deformers with weights. So if I go to my leg here, and I Command or Control double click on that weight tag, you can see that the animation that is coming from those joints and being applied via the weights and the skin deformer, these will translate nicely to Aero. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that we have weight influences on each vertices here. Okay, and what that means is that we have two joints influencing the mesh of our character here. Now, with this character, it's very simple. You know, it's just using two joints for the legs and the arms. But one thing that's very important is that in Aero, the weight influence on vertices are 6 joints per vertex. So for a leg with 2 joints, we're good because we only have 2 joints influencing each vertex at any given point. But say you have facial animation or you have fingers, there's a lot more joints to influence vertices. So that's where you can get into trouble. So you can only have so much of a complex type of rig for it to translate over to Aero. Okay, so another thing to keep in mind is that pose morph, point level animation, fluid cloth dynamics, and soft body dynamics are not supported. So if you had anything animated with like a spline wrap or something that I had for this initial animation is I had a jiggle deformer on this guy's belly because of course, I mean, I need to get some jiggle on that little belly going on there. That could not be exported out because if I wanted to bake a jiggle deformer, I would need to bake it out to PLA or point level animation, and point level animation is not supported by Adobe Aero. So that kind of stinks. It's a limitation. It's kind of a limitation of a lot of AR these days, but maybe in the future we'll get that full support. So if you wanted to get around something like you have MoGraph cloner animation or you had rigid body animation, this all would need to be baked out to PSR keyframes using your typical going into the timeline. Say this leg had, you know, rigid body dynamics on it. I would drag and drop this leg into here and then just go to function, bake objects, and then just make sure that we're baking to position, scale, and rotation there. Okay, so again, PLA is not supported. So if you can bake, say, MoGraph cloned animation that has dynamics applied to it, you could still bake out the position, scale, and rotation of that MoGraph cloner movement via effectors or via dynamics using this bake objects command. Okay, so with my setup here, I'm all good because I'm using position, scale, and rotation, and I'm getting animation via skin deformers and weights and joints. And basically that is those are the two major ways to get animation from Cinema 4D and into an app like Adobe Aero. Okay, so we're all good. Let's get ready to export. So got this animation. What I'm going to do is go ahead and go to my file and we're going to go to export. Now, the main file format that makes sense for Cinema 4D users to export into Aero is FBX. Now, GLTF is also supported. It's a major AR format, and at the time of recording this tutorial, the only way to get GLTF formats out of Cinema 4D is via a plugin that you can download off of the Maxon Labs website called GLTF Export that we'll have in the description section. You can get the link there, but check that out if you want to do that. But you don't even need that for the Adobe Aero workflow because FBX works really nicely from all of my tests. So let's go ahead and choose FBX here. And basically the only setting you really need to worry about is number 1, subdivision surface. So I did have a subdivision surface here, but I made it editable. You could do that. Or if you have a live subdivision surface, you can have that baked down automatically by unchecking subdivision surface and just making sure this bake subdivision surface is checked on to make sure that when you have a live subdivision surface, it actually bakes out to that smoother, highly subdivided surface, and that is then the end result. If you have a live subdivision surface in here, and you just have this checked on, this subdivision surface, what's going to happen is that the subdivision surface is just going to go away, and what you're going to be left is with that chunky base level of geometry. Okay, so if you have subdivision surfaces, make sure you uncheck that and make sure you bake subdivision surface, or you can just make it editable like I did by selecting that object and hitting the C key to make editable. Now, one thing to point out is if you have live primitive objects in your scene, or sweeps or extrudes, generator objects like that, anything other than subdivision surface, those will automatically be baked out. So you don't have to make everything editable if you don't want to. Once you export out as an FBX, it'll just bake all those primitives for you automatically. Now, what we're going to do is basically all of these settings are good. If you have textures and material, make sure that's checked on, and the embed textures. But right now I don't have any textures. I just have those base materials. So we're all good here. I'm going to click OK, and I'm just going to go and save that to my Sumo joints folder there, and it's going to export our FBX here. Now what we can go ahead and do is open our Creative Cloud menu here, and we're going to click on this little globe and just click on Cloud Documents. And what this is going to do is launch into our Creative Cloud browser here. And you can see I have some documents here. What we're going to do is we're going to go into our synced files, and let's go and bring our file that we just saved out, our FBX file. Let's go into our folder here. So there's my Sumo Joints FBX file. Now, if you actually had an image texture as a material, what that will save out as is a textures folder. If you have those separate textures in this separate texture folder, make sure you zip the FBX and the textures in a single zip file, and then upload that resulting zip file to the Creative Cloud synced files area here, so you can actually utilize, and Aero can read those textures and apply them. So, but for our instance, I don't have any image textures here. I just have straight up color channels and material and reflections. So I'm just going to go ahead, click open. You can see I already have a little Sumo object here, but that's the copy. So now what we can do is we have this saved to our Creative Cloud, and now we can access this FBX file from Adobe Aero. So let's hop over into my iPad and let's get my Sumo onto my computer desk. All right, so here we are in Adobe Aero, and let's go ahead and create a new scene. So what we're gonna do is gonna go to our lower left here and create new. And what we're gonna do now is slowly pan our device to track the surface of my table here. And you can track as far and wide as you want. And you can see I can even get my monitor here to register as a 3D plane, which is really cool. Hey, there's my Sumo character in my computer. And there we go. We got all of these surfaces here. Now let's go ahead and we're just going to tap to create an anchor point, okay? And now what we're going to be able to do is click this lower left plus button here, the plus circle, and we saved our FBX file to Creative Cloud. So I'm going to click on Creative Cloud, and that's going to bring up our Creative Cloud assets. And here is my Sumo Joints copy FBX file. So I'm going to select that, and we have no preview. I'm just going to click open in the lower right here, and it's going to start calculating. I'm just going to tap to place that asset right there. And it's thinking, and there, boom, there's my Sumo. My Sumo's up there, but my Sumo's down here too. Let's go ahead. I'm just going to pinch to scale this guy down. I can click to move, just kind of scrub around here, and that's looking good. And now what I can do, it's not moving, but what I can do is quickly go ahead and add and apply that animation from our skin deformer and apply it to our character. So I'm just going to click on the character. I'm going to go to behaviors here in that bottom menu, and here's where we can make our object interactive. So what we're going to do first is create a trigger. Now we have 3 sets of triggers. One is where it just starts at the beginning of the experience, so you don't need to trigger it any other way. It just starts automatically. You can have it trigger by touch, so you just touch and tap on your screen, tap on the object to start that animation. Or if your device enters a certain proximity of the character or the object, it will then trigger the animation that way. So a lot of flexibility as far as how to trigger an animation. So I'm just going to let's start with touch, okay? So once we do that, we now have to define an action. This is like so great because it's all like little nodes and there's no programming whatsoever. Okay, this is so cool. Like I'm not technically inclined, but and this is so easy for me, and that's what I love about Adobe Aero. So here we go. Let's click on action and look at all these actions we have. So we have just general animate, where we can actually create our own motion path by just clicking on our screen and moving our finger around. We can also add a bounce, or move or scale or rotate, all this stuff. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to focus on bringing our animation from Cinema 4D and applying it to our characters. So I'm going to go into animate, and you're going to see there's my subject, my FBX right there. Okay, but then we have the animation here, and we have quaternion, keyframe, scale keyframes, translation keyframes. I'm just going to keep it at quaternion. And I'm going to click the play button in the top right of this window. And you can see there is our character. Now, it's animating, but it's not animating correctly because the right leg here, I'll zoom in here. You can see that the right leg, the Sumo's right leg, it's to our left, is not planted on the ground. It's kind of going through. Now, this is a little bit of a quirk that I've noticed and kind of worked through. What I found that fixed it is if you go to the quaternion keyframes, change it to something else, and then hit play. Now you'll see that fixed that. I don't know why, but I can go back to quaternion. You'll see if I hit that play button again, it's fixed. It's actually recognizing the skin deformer animation now, and not just the position, scale, rotation that was applied to the torso of my character. So what's cool is we have the option to change the play count so it can loop however many amount of times that we want. So we can also have this set to just loop infinitely. But what I'll do is have this play 3 times, and you can even have a delay. So the moment you touch the character, maybe it has like a 3-second delay before it actually plays. So we can, maybe do that, give it a second of delay. Let's go back to the top here and let's hit play, and you'll notice a delay, and there it goes. And now it's going to do it 3 times. You can see that the foot is no longer planted again. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to flip back and forth to this quaternion, hit that play button again. We're going to get that delay, and now it's planted again. So a little bit of a quirky kind of thing to go back and forth between the quaternion and the translation. You can see that we actually lose the planting after the first loop. So let me just turn off this delay because we don't want to wait. I don't want to wait. And let's hit play again and see if that fixed it. So that fixed it. So going back between translation keyframes and quaternion keyframes seems to fix that pivot issue. So I don't know if you'll discover this issue in your own animation, but at least that's how I figured how to get past that little bit of a hitch in this animation. So once we're good, once we have the amount of play count and everything, we can now hit that bottom check mark there, and we could either program another action, or we can just be like, okay, that's cool. That's all I want this character to do. And now what we can do is we can actually, say you want to record this and post it to Instagram, get them grams, get those likes. What we can do is go from edit mode to preview mode, and you're going to see that this is actually just going to play automatically. And you'll see that that's because the behavior is set to touch. So what happened there? So let's go back to preview. And again, this is another one of those little hitches that it'll play automatically, but if you go back to edit and then back to preview, it will wait for your touch. It'll wait for you to touch the character. And so before I even touch the character, what I'm going to do is click the record button on the right side there. That top little camera button is, if you touch that, you can actually just take a snapshot, and it will automatically save to your iPhotos library, your photo library. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit the record button, and now I'm recording this whole screen capture here. Okay, so now I'm gonna touch my character, and that's gonna trigger my stomping animation. He's so mighty, he's so tough, and I can touch it again and trigger that 3 animation loop all over again, which is really cool. So I can create my own little cool choreographed animation. Looking good. I'm just gonna stop recording now. Okay, so that's cool. I can even go ahead and I have this scene laid out. I can share this scene with this character and those movements to anyone else as an Aero experience or a reality file or this universal scene description. And what this will allow someone else to do is you can send this project file over, and they can actually play it and open it in their own environment when they bring it into their own Adobe Aero app. Okay, so if your client wants to look at this and see the animation and see the interaction kind of stuff and play around with it, you can save these little files and send them, and they'll just open up Adobe Aero on their end, open up that scene file. They'll have to track their own room and own environment, but then they can go ahead and do those same triggers and see that same animation that we are right now, which is really, really cool. So again, we recorded that, so I can go into my photos here, and there is my photo. Okay, there's my animation, there's my video at least that I recorded. So I can go ahead and send this to, Instagram or wherever you want to show this, tweet that out, get all those dope likes. And this is just really, really cool. And again, I think if you create a single still frame, that'll show up here as well. But let's hop back into Adobe Aero. And what I'm going to need to do again is just rescan my surface. And there's my little character again. Let's go and scan over here. And I'll tap to place him there. Now let's go and do a different behavior. Actually, let's just go ahead and delete this. And so I just showed you how to apply your animation from Cinema 4D and bring it in here. But what if we wanted to add a different character? So I happen to have a different non-animated character that I made in Cinema 4D. It's this little cactus character. Just go ahead and open that. I'm just going to tap to place that here. And you can see here's my little character, my little cactus lady. I'll position this character there. And I'm going to click on it. And there's no animation that I applied to this. But the cool thing about Adobe Aero is it was that easy to bring in my animation from Cinema 4D that I did in Cinema 4D. It is just as easy to program your own animations to a static model, a static object. So what I can do is go to behaviors again, and I'll make this object interactive. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to have this this animation, whatever animation I'm going to make, I'm just going to have it play at the start. So I'm not going to trigger it by touch or anything like that. And let's go ahead and choose an animation. Let's try bounce. Bounce is super fun. So let's go ahead. I'm just going to hit that play button in the top right of this little menu here. And whoa, he went all the way up. Let's go and just scroll down. You can see this Y offset. It's set to 1. I'm not sure if it's like 1 yard or what that was. But what I'm going to do is just bring this way lower. So maybe let's do about 1. And let's see what that looks like. So that's a tiny hop. It's very slow, so let's go down even more, and let's adjust the duration. The duration is how long that jump animation takes. So it's about 2 seconds. Let's bring that down to like 0.5 seconds. And let's go ahead and hit that top right play button there. And okay, we got a little brisk jump. Nice jump. Cool, cool, cool. And we can also adjust the Y offset and Z offset, but I'm just gonna use that Y offset just so it jumps straight up, looking good. And just hitting the play button over and over again to do that. One other thing that's really cool is we can have like a little decaying bounce, so we can adjust the rebounds. So I'll add like 2 rebounds and go to the top and hit that play button. You can see that this is a little too fast. So we can go and maybe adjust that duration and hit play again. We got this cool squash and stretchy bounce with no coding, just by using these very intuitive controls. We can also adjust like the easing. We have linear keyframes right now. Can do ease in, ease out. Let's see what that looks like. So that doesn't look very realistic. So as we're doing bouncing, so let's just stick with linear. And again, we have that play count again. We have the back and forth. We have infinite. We have that delay, just like we had with our other option before. So that's cool. We can program that. But I'm just going to X out of that because what I want to do is I want to choose a different action. And what I'm going to do is go back into our animate. Now, I mentioned that I didn't actually keyframe anything at all from Cinema 4D. But one of the cool things is this is a static object. I can actually program and create my own new animation here just by clicking and moving my finger on my iPad and basically choreographing and doing like a motion sketch kind of deal where it's tracking or recording all the movement of my finger on the surface of my iPad and create an animation that way. So let's create new animation. And we have the option to fix this character to the ground. I'm just going to turn that off because what I want to do is have this character jump over my Cinema 4D Basecamp mug here. Okay, so let's go turn that off, fix to ground, and you can see on the very top there, it says to record the animation, we're gonna hold the object for 3 seconds. And once I do that, counting down, take off. Now it's going to, let's hold that again. 3, 2, 1. And now I'm moving this around and it's tracking my finger. So I'm just moving my finger along the surface of my iPad. Let's have it jump over the cup. Whoa. Boom. Jumped over the mug. Let's jump over again. Whoa. And this is recording all of my movements right now. You can see that little record button doing the thing, blinking. And you can jump back and forth. And this is just so much fun. So there we go. I just recorded all that animation. And now we can preview it by hitting the play button there. And there's my animation that I created, my little motion path. So it's kind of like Cappuccino in Cinema 4D where you can record the movement. And this is really cool. Now if I go and hit the little settings icon to the right here, I can adjust the path smoothing there. And you can see that this is behaving as a car, as if it's like going over a hill, or, you know, it's almost like an align to spline kind of behavior. But if I click here, I can make this act as like a helicopter. And what that's going to do, it's going to recalculate this animation here. And if I try to hit play again here, still doing its thing, still calculating. But what this is going to do is remove that align to spline. And let's see what this looks like. Now it looks like it's traveling like a helicopter where it's not kind of angling down. And this is super cool. It's going back and forth, going back and forth. Really, really awesome stuff. Whoa! Jumps over the mug. Cactus jumps over the mug. That's a fairy tale book, right? Cactus jumps over the mug. But this is just the power of Adobe Aero, that you can do something like this. And again, we could save this. So let's save that out. We'll click the lower right checkbox there. And let's go back to our preview mode. And now we can again record this animation and save this animation. And we can move our iPad around, get whatever angle we want, be our little digital director here. There he goes. There she goes, jumping over the mug. And we'll stop recording that and we can save that and show that to the world. So just incredible the amount of power and control you have to create your own AR experiences using Adobe Aero. It's just so much fun. And I've been wanting something like this for a very long time that takes all of the programming away from programming your own animations, programming your own AR experiences. And I am super excited to see where Adobe Aero takes us. And I'm really excited to see what the community is going to start making, especially the C4D community. I want to see a bunch of little animating characters and all that good stuff. So that's it. That's Adobe Aero. Living in crazy times, man. It's incredible to see what Adobe Aero is doing right now and what the future of AR can possibly be in creating content in AR when those barriers, all those technical barriers can be dropped. So if you want to keep up to date on not only AR news, but industry news in general, be sure to hit that subscribe button and please like, really appreciate that. And I will see you in the next one. Bye, everybody.